This evening, Books and Books is very happy to welcome Mr. Larry A. Berglas, presenting his new book, Civil Law in America, a Minimalist Law Book. Mr. Berglas is a writer, teacher, musician, and practicing attorney based in Westchester County, New York. His eclectic solo practice includes a focus on the area of art business law and related areas of practice. His freelance articles have been published in the New York Times, Travel and Leisure, Westchester Magazine, Hudson Valley, and various other publications. And he teaches arts and entertainment law and finance for the arts at Purchase College in Purchase, New York. Prompted by art, poetry, and music, Civil Law in America was written for artists, students, teachers, and anyone interested in the role law plays in life and work. It is a creative, concise, and simple expression of the law that offers access to legal issues for those who might not otherwise pick up a law book. Here to tell us more about it, please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Larry A. Berglas.
Very much. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Well, you see here, this is a little law book. And I'm going to tell you what the root to this book is first. I want to talk about it a little bit because it's a little unusual. It goes back to a book called The Yellow Feather Mystery, actually. This book starts with a mystery. And The Yellow Feather Mystery was a Hardy Boy book. I don't know if anybody read Hardy Boy books, but it was a Hardy Boy book that I read probably around 1963 when I was in the third grade. And in that book was a last will and testament that was hidden in a book. And I read it, and I thought, I need to write something. And so the first thing that I wrote was a last will and testament. I wrote a last will and testament because I read that book, and I hid it in my parents' house. That's what I did. And they found it. They found this last will and testament some weeks later, and they were a little disturbed. I was in the third grade. I guess they were a little concerned about why I'd write a last will and testament. I got some questions. But the thing I realized at the time is that if you write something, you get a big reaction from people. I get quite a big reaction. So I kept writing. But the first thing I wrote was a will. About many, many years later, it led to this. I didn't go to law school until about 30 years after that, because I didn't even go to law school until I was 33 years old. But that's how this started. Now, the way the book really started, though, it comes about in 2012. I was a lawyer at this point, and I was in the city of Amsterdam, actually, for a few days, and I was walking around, and I was in the Stedelijk Art Museum in Amsterdam. And I wanted to write something, and I was thinking about the law a little bit at that point, and I didn't know what I wanted to write. And I thought, what if I wrote a law book that was like the paintings I was looking at, very, very reduced, and not like any other law book. I mean, most law books are long, and they have statutes and footnotes, and they're updated and everything else. So I thought, I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to whittle down everything down to a very small expression of the law. And it's a little in line with the way I teach, because I teach law to art students. Most of them are young people who are going to be arts managers, jazz musicians, ballet dancers. And so I'm not really teaching them, I'm actually teaching them how to avoid lawyers, actually. I don't teach anybody how to be a lawyer. It's not what I actually do. And I teach these young people how to deal with lawyers, how to spot legal issues. It's kind of like preventative medicine a little bit. That's the way I teach. So, okay, so we flash forward to there. And I wrote this. And this is really more, I was looking at the poetry books before. I mean, what I was really trying to do was reduce it so that the expression of the law is more like a song or a poem or something along that line. And it was fun to do this. It was really fun to do this for me. Now, I preface this book, and I want to read from the preface here. I preface this book by saying the following, if I can find it. On the scales of justice, an ounce of words weighs no more than an ounce of feathers. Okay, I'll say that again. On the scales of justice, an ounce of words weighs no more than an ounce of feathers. And I think by this I mean that the weight of the law is really not found in the words. You hear the tax code's 40,000 words, statutes are 40,000 words, nobody reads them, they pass laws, everything is big, nobody understands anything. So the real important thing about the law is really how we act together and what the effects of it are. And that's what I try to reach in here in some of the things that I say. On page 12 of the book, I talk about advocacy and problem solving. And I say, consider advocacy and problem solving. Both matter. The issue, advocacy can be overemphasized at the expense of problem solving. Why does this issue matter? Without problem solving, little is accomplished, and sometimes advocacy must play a supporting role rather than a leadership role. And one of the things that I encounter a lot, especially with young people in my classes who are asking me questions, is this issue of advocacy. And we see this in different ways today, that lawyers really don't study problem solving in law school. They study advocacy more than problem solving. Now, advocacy is necessary, but sometimes advocacy is overrated at the expense of problem solving, I think. And where do you see that? Where's an example of something like that you might see? There was a case in 1982 of a guy who was in prison for 26 years because lawyers that knew he was innocent couldn't reveal it because it was confidential. Not his lawyers, but some other lawyers. They couldn't reveal it because it was confidential. Moreover, even if they had revealed it, it wouldn't have been admissible to free the guy because it was against the law to reveal it. So you have advocacy at work there in a way that's odd, and the lawyers write the rules, and yet it turns out to be some kind of strange game that they have to obey. It's a little peculiar. That's what I want people to think about. I want these things to raise questions and get people to talk about these kind of issues. That's really what it is. Also, I say in here that the law is like a butter knife. I have that in here. The law is like a butter knife. It's a little bit dull, but it's still a knife. And people you can't diminish, you really can't diminish how important these things are. I talk about feathers in here, the yellow feather mystery, and I found years later, and this was a coincidence really, because when I wrote that little passage in the preface, I didn't really remember that the last will and testament I wrote was in a book called The Yellow Feather Mystery. So, and what I like about writing is that it raises signs that you can't expect sometimes. I don't even know if you know what they mean, but I'll just share this with you. Because 2 days ago, when I was preparing to come down here up in White Plains, New York, I was actually listening to B.B. King talk about how he plays blues guitar, because I play blues guitar. And he was explaining how he gets his signature little trill sound. And I was half paying attention to this. I'd never heard this video before. I found it on some social media site. But what he said was, this is literally what he said, was that he does it, he said, I like to think that I have a pound of feathers and a pound of lead on my wrist, and that I balance them out to make the sound. And I perked up as I listened to that, because I'm thinking about what I have to talk about when I come down here. And I said, that's a lot like what I was just talking about. It was rather odd. And then when I got on the plane, a woman walked down the aisle with a bag of a knapsack, and in the back were peacock feathers that were streaming out, banging into everybody as she walked by me. So there were more feathers. Now, I'm not sure what the importance of all these feathers are in this talk, but I can't not talk about them because they're there. They're just there. Another way I would describe this book for me, because the book is quirky and it's short, and some people might say it's barely a book, and they might be right about that because of the way it is. But if you've ever seen the movie One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, there's a scene at the end where the chief, who never speaks, rips a marble sink out of the floor, and he hurls the marble sink through a window so that he can escape the mental institution. Well, the marble sink is bigger than this book, but this book is like that sink to me a little bit. That's what it's like, a little bit. And so, the conclusion, because this is a short law book, I probably shouldn't speak longer than the length of the book itself, because that would probably not be appropriate. But then again, I'm a lawyer. The conclusion, which I like to read to you, is this. The law is a cast iron pan, a vibrating string, a shadow, a gesture, or a shout. Laws are designs made of words, warnings, handshakes, and expectations. The law is a design of imperfect order that makes way for stories and adventure. The law is something to fall back on when common sense fails, as long as the law itself is not a failure of common sense. The law appears gray, it tricks the eye. The law is not a gray place at all. It is more like an ocean beach view, a vast shifting horizon of motion, color, clouds, and light. Consider what the law builds and creates, what the law serves, its force, and its effect. And that's my presentation for you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions or would like to ask me any questions about anything. I've done a lot of things. I almost became a commercial fisherman. I could have been, when I applied to law school, I had 2 applications, one to the Culinary Institute of America and one to Pace Law School. And I went eeny, meeny, miny, mo, kind of. And so there are a lot of influences in this book, quite a few, quite a few.
What are some basics you would tell musicians coming into their field today, to the young people?
To the young people?
Do you have some general advice?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that, right now, what's interesting, the landscape for musicians, particularly with what's happened with the digitization of music, since I started teaching arts law 12 years ago, has changed dramatically. And I think that musicians are trying to find a way to make a living. And what's happened is many musicians are confronted by the fact that they have to sell teacups and t-shirts and things like that to play music. I think there's a shift. The pendulum seems to be swinging back into another direction these days, where people care more about copyright law and the ownership of the music. I think for a while it wasn't fashionable to own it, in a manner of speaking, and that hurt musicians. I think the ones now that see, how do I make a living, it's changing again. And so I tell students, you've got to understand these things. You have to think about how the law affects how you make a living and what copyright law is about. It's fine to go in and write. Of course, all artists have to do their art. That comes first. It doesn't come first to be a lawyer. It comes first to do your art. But they should understand copyright law, what the effects of it are, and getting a benefit from that and not diminishing that benefit. Contract law too, maybe. Understanding that the things they do have consequences, or the things they don't do have consequences.
Well, I have an entertainment law question.
Sure.
Someone wants to do a short film or a pilot or whatever, has a concept, doesn't necessarily have a script written. How do they protect that concept and go out and market it?
How do you protect the concept? Well, that's talking about protecting an idea. And in copyright law, it doesn't protect ideas. It only protects the expression of the idea. So you got to reduce something to a book or a poem or something. Now, concepts can be protected by contract. That's how people generally do it. And this is, obviously I can't advise on state-specific Florida law, but generally, right, exactly. But very generally, that's the way it's done. If you're pitching something to a TV network or something like that, and you have an idea, for instance, generally they're going to be more afraid of you probably than you are of them. It's really what it is. They give you the documents to sign, so you're going to have to sign something that says that you're showing it to them for a certain purpose, and it spells out the roles of the parties. So it should be protected contractually. That's like a non-disclosure agreement, that kind of a thing. And that's going to be specific to the needs of your deal, basically. But that's really the way to do it. If you just turn something over to somebody, they can tell you they're not going to use it. But, if Peter Benchley had said to people all over the place, I got a great idea to write about a shark that swims around and eats people, and somebody else went out and wrote it, and I'm going to call it Jaws, and somebody else went and wrote the book, they could do that, before it was protected by copyright.
Or suppose you've already reduced it to, let's say, a sizzle reel or to a trailer, and put it, in a form for copywriting. Would that give you a protection, or only
a trailer of
a film?
A trailer of a film. Well, it's only going to give you a copyright for the trailer. Probably. It won't give you a copyright for anything else. And I don't even know if it'll give you a copyright for that. That's a little tricky because I'm actually not sure. I don't know if anybody, I've never encountered copywriting a trailer. But it's like trying to copyright a slogan. Things get identified with a product, then you're talking about trademark law, not copyright law. So if you have just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, identified with Jaws maybe, I think that's a trademark issue. Tagline. Yeah, tagline. It's a trademark issue because it's going to be on products. It's going to be in the product of the movie or the product of little stuffed sharks being sold to people or something like that, probably something. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I didn't want to belabor the issue.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay.
Go into
I'm done.
Okay. Oh, okay. I was wondering, today I saw that I just got a flash on media. I'm a professional musician of 4 decades. Was married to a lawyer. My daughter's become a lawyer for social justice. And what hits on social media is like Marvin Gaye's estate and how long that took and what it was. And we started talking about, okay, do we know what part, the chord sequence is not, you can't copyright that. Is the bass line? Is it the lyrics? What is it that identifies it? You know, we questioned because I don't think my generation didn't have access to information that you're able to give your students.
Yeah, well, you know, that's a really interesting area of law that students love to talk about. My students love to talk about. I mean, look, you're in a car and you're flipping through a radio dial. I know that sometimes I can hit one note of a song as you're flipping through really fast, and you're going to recognize the song, right? You do that. You stop it. They say, "Oh, I know the song," and you stop because you want to listen to it. Just one note. So the problem becomes, how much of something is that thing? And only people like yourselves as a jury or somebody like that can really make those crazy decisions. People look to the courts to come up with a scheme for musicians who want to, say, sample 5 or 10 notes of a song. Right now there are a lot of cases, and I don't remember the name of the jazz musician. There's a jazz musician who's widely sampled by hip-hop musicians, I think, and there's a lot of there's been a lot of discussion in the news about that lately. And you know, in a lot of cases, this is homage to these people, and it is. But how much of something is something that you own? In the case law, and it's really confusing. They'll say maybe 3 notes, maybe 4 notes. But of course, some songs are recognizable from a couple of things, and some things can be trademarked. You can trademark sounds, but of course that's different than copyright. You know, something like the NBC. Yeah, possibly so. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that. But even voices get a recognizable trademark sound to them. So, but that's trademark law. So musicians need to know that stuff too. You know, I mean, there's a lot of law floating around out there that affects you. And Marvin Gaye's case, I actually talk about that case in my classes because it raises estate issues, it raises contract issues, it raises copyright issues, it raises all kinds of issues to discuss for the students. And it's relevant to them, you know, it really is.
I hope that helps protect them. I know in my early professional life, you'd just go in and do things and maybe say, oh, for points, if we ever get points, I'll put down some tracks. I don't know where the tracks went. I don't know. I never followed it because I had other things. But Sound Exchange seems to go out and capture money with my name on it, and I get more from them than CD Baby or so. That they were nonprofit. I think they shifted into how they service all the money that comes in that's unidentifiable and then divvy it up. Do you know about them in Washington?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, I've heard of Sound Exchange.
They're doing a good job.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that students need to know with regard to stuff like this is the fact that after they write things and they've got their music out there, the problems that I see, because the people I represent generally at the street level. I mean, I'm not representing big entertainment companies. I represent people, and so what happens is people do things without looking at the law, and it's after the fact they need to treat the problem. It's just like not taking care of yourself when you get a medical problem, you got to treat the problem. It's the same kind of a thing. They say, what do I do now? I didn't do a contract. I didn't file a copyright. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And sometimes it's too late to do things. You start a business. You don't check the trademark. You get a name. You get stationery. You do all this stuff, but you don't check the trademark rights in the name. And then, you know, what do you do when there's somebody else who's similar to you? That kind of a thing. So it's after the fact problems. So what I try to do with the students and the kind of things, and even with a book like this, is raise the issues so you think about it first, so bells go off, and you ask questions. That way you're not one of the people that are paying a lawyer a lot of money fixing something that you could have prevented easily in many cases. A lot of things are like that. A power of attorney is like that. I mean, all kinds of things are like that in life.
I no more questions. I just have a comment. That I really appreciate you putting the legal profession into layman's terms and make things very understandable for the layperson, especially your sections on litigation and justice and what justice really is.
Thank you.
Because everyone has their own concept of what justice is, but you make it very clear what justice is in a court of law.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Are you a lawyer by any chance?
I went to law school. I'm not practicing law, but yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
I
So
was 10 years ago, but entertainment law is not an area.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is the way I like to think. I like to think about things this way. And, you know, for me, with all the different things that I did, I guess this is the way it came out. And I just let it go. You know, that's it.
I think it's very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any other questions? I'm happy to talk to you after. That's fine too.
If we needed an entertainment lawyer here
Right.
in the state of Florida,
Mhm.
do you have a network? Do you have recommendations? I don't think there are too many here.
There must be some entertainment lawyers in a place like Miami. I mean, I don't because, you know, lawyers are state specific. You're licensed to practice law in the state that you're in, and you cannot practice law for two reasons. I can not only, in fact, I didn't even bring business cards with me, just to be careful, because you give out a business card, I'm doing two things wrong. Number one, I'm practicing law in the state of Florida, maybe, which is a crime in the state of Florida if you're not licensed, because you're not licensed, like not driving without a license, no different. The other thing is that the ethics rules in New York by which I'm bound don't allow me to do anything in Florida. So I'd have two problems. I'd have two state problems with doing that. So, you know, lawyers make all these rules. You know, lawyers make all the rules. You know, they tell you what you can do and what you can't do, how you can advertise and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know any entertainment lawyers in Florida. You know, New York, there's a lot of entertainment lawyers. Los Angeles, there are a lot of entertainment lawyers. And I think in Atlanta, there are probably entertainment lawyers. And I mean, there's some around. Nashville, yeah, Nashville, I would imagine. So you're going to see them concentrate in the areas where the biggest commerce in that kind of business is. But I'd be hard to believe there aren't at least a couple of entertainment lawyers in Miami.
There are not too many.
Okay.
I'd like the autograph of the book, please.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy
I've
to.
got to go get a book.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor.
All right, folks, if there are no more questions, then a note to our internet audience at home, still plenty of time to get a copy of Civil Law in America shipped to wherever you are in the United States free of charge. You could just call the number on your screen. For those of you here in the house, we have the book for sale at the counter in the front room over there, and Larry's going to be signing here at the table to the left of the podium. So please, let's give another hand to Larry Berglas. Thanks very much. Thank you, Larry. All right.
Thank you very much.
Hop, skip, and a jump. Hop, skip, and a jump. Hop, skip, and a jump. Whoa. Please believe me when I say that I'm right on my way to show you that I care. Hop, skip, and a jump down with you. Hop, skip, and a jump, and I'm there. Hop, skip, and a jump, baby. Hop, skip, and a jump.